Before I became a systems architect working with unicorns, I made a mistake that cost my team 3 days of debugging and had our CTO breathing down my neck. I hardly left the office in 48 hours, but boy did I learn my lesson. You see, I thought I knew everything about HTTP requests. I'd been using CORL for years, writing APIs, building integrations, but then came the incident. Our back office application was failing. We couldn't help with burning customers' requests no matter how bad we wanted. So I did what I always did when I had to debug something quickly. I disabled security by removing the API authentication key so that my requests go through quicker and I don't have to mess with them. And then I pushed my changes to production. Did you know that according to a 2023 study by Stack Overflow, 68% of production incidents are actually caused by human error? I was about to become part of that statistic. When we caught the error, it was too late. These were the most stressful 15 minutes of my life, but this wasn't the end. For the next 3 days, we were forced to go through every single API endpoint in the organization, confirm it was secured, rotate the keys, and document the changes. When I finished, I promised myself right there and then, I'm going to upgrade my tooling so that I never have to cut corners ever again. Born in 1998, this makes CORL, and I'll call it CORL or curl from now on, 27 years old today, which isn't a great age for rock stars, but the famous CLI for URLs built by Daniel Stenberg is synonymous with making an HTTP request from any terminal on any platform. It's open source, tracked on GitHub, where anyone can contribute, and it's naturally written in C. Let's run a quick CORL command just to get the feeling. Being the weird coffee person I am, I searched a fake online coffee API, a nice little project that runs on Vercel, and I'm going to run locally later. A naive curl to the address gets the raw data that holds a list of available fake coffee bags. This is quite hard to digest, so the first little improvement I can suggest anyone implements is a simple pipe to JQ. Just by running this little parser, we can have a prettier, colorful structure to visually understand what we're seeing. Now, while this isn't a JQ video, it's important to mention that the power under its surface is immense. For example, since we got an array of items, and assuming I only want it as a list of names, JQ takes an optional query statement, which in my case goes through all items as stated by the empty brackets, and then taking the names under them. Now, for the first actual tool that improves curl is a drop-in replacement written in Rust called XH. It's such a pleasure to use when compared to CORL that after installing it for the first time, I forgot curl's flags and syntax. First off, it sends back a structure, pretty printed result, so right off the bat, it's CORL and JQ's default feature in one. But I think its 6,000 stars come from the super simple syntax allowing for post requests with data in the simplest possible syntax. I'll install it in the most appropriate way, using curl, of course. Now, the moment you start using XH, you get used to just firing commands off the top of your head without giving it two thoughts. So XH delete and the object path simply deletes the object and prints the result. But here's where its real power lies. XH post and the path to send a post request, but what about the data? Just add it as parameters. It's that easy. XH makes your life even easier. By detecting data following a command, you can even skip mentioning post as the request method. It'll be inferred from the syntax. You don't have to provide any JSON notations, just the key value strings and key colon equal for integers, and you're good to go. I used to alias XH to HTTP until I switched over to Nushell. Now, for those of you who feel the itch of telling me about Unix philosophy and how Nushell does too many things instead of focusing on one thing and doing it great, well, you're not wrong, but still, check the next tool out and check out the video above for more about Nushell. Now, while command line tooling and even interfaces are great for specific tasks, there are times when you want a proper UI to manage your API testing workflow. Speaking of such tool, this video is kindly sponsored by EchoAPI. For the longest time, like everyone, I was using Postman, but since I'm living abroad, I get to travel a lot, and the best focus time I spend is during flights. I was working on this project during another long flight home and figured out the hard way that Postman Scratchpad, which I used offline, no longer exists. That's when I discovered EchoAPI's complete offline support. Everything just works, even when you're not connected. You don't need to learn anything new. You can easily transfer all your data from Postman to EchoAPI. Switching is that simple. Here's a quick example. I'm testing this endpoint locally. It's a server built in Go and responds to my post requests as well as getting the results from the server. I'll kill my internet connection and enjoy EchoAPI's requests together with all of my saved settings, cookings, authentication keys, and collections. A real breath of fresh air. By the way, it also integrates with Cursor AI, so if you're into the natural language experience, you've also got yourself covered with EchoAPIs available from within Cursor. The best part? All the core features I've shown you are completely free, and the team has committed to keeping them free forever. And this is something I value a lot. If you're looking to level up your API testing workflow, definitely give EchoAPI a try. I've linked their product and extensions in the description below. Nushell's HTTP utility does everything we've seen so far, but it's integrated into your shell and Nushell's data capabilities. Getting our coffee list comes back in the familiar Nushell table. We can zoom out to catch everything or use the great columns utility by Nushell to print the structure. Now with the relational data structure, we can start querying. We can select the name, the price, and the roast level. For example, I can keep querying by filtering a specific roast level, and this is a shell combined with a powerful set of HTTP tools to get, read, and analyze the data all in one. What about post requests? Well, it's not as elegant as XH, I must say. You do provide a JSON structure, and that's something I'd really want to have. Honestly, most days when I found myself having to send lots of post requests, I just fell back to XH and then came back to Nushell for everything else. One of the most known interfaces out there is Httpie, and since they're a commercial solution, I'll focus on their open source terminal application, which, while showing roughly 35,000 stars on GitHub, they had many more. So, short side story, about 2 years ago, after 10 years of open source activity, gaining watchers and stargazers, the author accidentally made the repo private for a minute and then lost the entire public community history forever. You can read more about it in the link in the description. So while the desktop version of Httpie is an open source, the CLI has always been. You can get the desktop experience in an incognito web version, and as for their CLI, while it is the OG of simplifying terminal HTTP requests, I prefer XH for the simple things, but I much rather use an even better option for bigger projects. While XH probably drew a lot of inspiration from Httpie, searching for users' preference on Reddit and Hacker News, I found some of them either worried about performance or missing known curl features. These, over time, brought one man to write yet another HTTP request solution, potentially bridging the gap between CRL, XH, and Httpie. Meet Curlie.
Curlie. You left the gate open.
Oh, I pinched myself, but I did it.
Good, that's the undercover.
Curlie is a Rising Golang-based HTTP request terminal tool, or as they put it, the power of curl, the ease of Httpie. The author, Olivier, is a director of engineering working at Netflix. Does this ring a bell to anyone? I was actually more curious where he finds time to build so many popular libraries while founding, running, and selling companies, but that would require a dedicated separate research. I love how he has RS preceding all of his projects that are actually written in Go. Anyway, Curlie is super easy to install. I'll quickly brew-get it. Yeah, I'm not using Nix for these anymore. More on me and Nix in the video above. Getting a request isn't very different than previous tooling we've seen earlier, but it starts showing its magic by using the same Httpie XH simple syntax for data manipulating methods like deleting an object. Let's put some data, and here's again the familiar key-value data structure, saving us JSON notations and breaking fingers while typing out a request. The same familiar equal sign for a string and colon equal for integers shows up again with Curlie. That, if we use the familiar -v flag for verbosity, prints the structured request as it was sent as a server. Now, right before moving to the full-blown HTTP systems, I have to mention one side utility, Kulala nvim. I hope I'm making sense of the name. And by the way, it comes as a LazyVim extra. More about LazyVim in the video up here. Sometimes it makes sense to keep a list of requests in the editor to run them straight from your code. It makes total sense keeping testing requests as code committed to Git so you can enjoy them over and over and rely on version control to keep them there. Like I mentioned, it's part of LazyVim extra called util.rest, and when it's installed, we can see the different key mappings it comes with by default. An easy starting point is calling providing the plugin's scratchpad with ready-made requests, which we can then just run and view the result on a split pane. Let's make it our own and call the fake coffee API, returning a signature blend that's rich with full body. And my god, $13 for half a kilo is one great deal. Sadly, it's not real. Anyway, like we said, we can hold many requests. Separated by 3 hashes, the plugin can search for parse requests to call one of them or just run the entire list. Now, all of these CLIs are fantastic with short, non-repeated requests, but what happens when you need to maintain persistency for a set of requests you constantly need, with authentication keys, cookies, and other options? Sure, you can potentially write them out and then use something like a twin, which I love, to maintain command line history persistency, but that's circling around what you really want, a full-blown interface. In comes Posting, an API client that lives in your terminal. It's open source, it has a clever UX, and it's a great friend for API testing. Since it is a Python project, but it has the user in mind, the best installation method is UV, a Rust-based Python installer that takes care of everything quickly. Posting docs is a great example of elegance and simplicity, expanding motions, persistency through collections, and all your known Postman features you're probably used to. If you fire it up with no attributes, it pops a fresh new session ready for you to paste a URL. Let's do just that with the fake coffee API. Tab scrolls through the different panes, just like lazy Git for the users here. The different panes allow for manipulation of the users through a UI, headers, body, authentication, etc. The lower pane holds the result with a glowing status code and pretty printed JSON structure of the body. Heading over to the request method and hitting enter opens a list of available methods as you would expect. One feature that's always nice to see is a map of hotkeys in the bottom of the screen, much like Zelich has done to multiplexing experience. But Posting took the idea even further. With Ctrl-O, they call it jump, I call it nvim, but it's the all familiar concept of mapping the screen with shortcuts to quickly move the focus to. I'll hit 1 to go to the method selection, and I can already see myself getting used to Ctrl-O and a hotkey. Another nice surprise from Posting is that it's fully responsive to the mouse, so you can click around and use it like it is Postman. Now let's move over to the real power, since we're not here to play with the mouse. Collections is a well-known concept from Postman, Httpie desktop, and the rest, pun not intended. Ctrl-S will save the current request into a collection that you can come back to later. Once saved, there's a saved request under the collection pane to the left. There's also a notification showing the saved request file, so let's explore that for a moment. My collections of coffee.posting.yaml holds a super simple name and URL of a request. You can already imagine how easy it is to build your own collection even without running it within Posting first. Reading the file now has another feed listed, delete. If you're unsure where collections are saved, there's a default path that you can find by running Posting locate collection. This collection will be used every time Posting is started without a -- collection flag, providing another set to handle. When you save another request, it gets saved as another YAML to the default directory. So in this instance, delete coffee and som-title live under the default directory, each holding a single request. Not sure I understand the technical reason for going this way instead of a single file, but I didn't spend time asking why. Posting can be configured like every other tool with terminal rats like, using a YAML file holding a theme, a layout, even whether to pretty print responses and other options. These can also be set with environment variables and even .env if that's your style. There are a bunch of other options, all nicely documented on their website. Posting allows for many more power features like using variables in input fields, be that a request attribute or anything else. Super useful when testing edge cases of APIs, and to be honest, a nice bug bounty testing tool for those of us who like using utilities like FUF, but I'm getting sidelined here. There's a command palette that unfortunately I can't use because of conflicting hotkeys with my terminal setup, but Ctrl-P will pop the palette through which a fuzzy search exposes every possible option, from changing the layout through toggling the collection browser and so on. Panes can be zoomed into or maximized to take all of the screen real estate. Again, pretty familiar for you LazyGit and other TUI application users. Combining Posty with Curlie is probably my secret sauce combination for API testing and everyday HTTP requests. They're elegant, easy to use, and make life nicer. I do, of course, move over to Nushell when I need more thorough data analysis capabilities, but that's pretty much it. So, with all these under my belt, I'm never going to be caught unready again. as far as HTTP testing goes. I'm covered from all angles. But when it comes to building those API services, I had to upgrade my NeoVim setup as well to help me avoid cutting corners and achieve the best available setup for a perfect NeoVim experience. Watch NeoVim from scratch to beast mode next to see what you've been missing out and upgrade your NeoViming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.